right, welcome back to One Bills Live. Chris Brown, Steve Tasker with you, and pleased to be joined now by NFL Network reporter James Palmer, who's always got his ear to the ground on the AFC West, but covers the league at large as well. And because of his AFC West background, he has a firm working knowledge of one Von Miller and the freakazoid that he is in terms of coming back from ACL injuries. This will be his second one, and he was recently on NFL Network kind of discussing Von's situation, so we figured we'd get James on here as well to kind of elaborate on that a little bit. So first of all, James, welcome. Thanks for joining us as always. And you know the psyche and eternally positive mindset of one Von Miller, who seems to be able to speak things into existence. When he says, I anticipate to be week one ready, maybe lay out the percentages for me, James, knowing Von as you do. How much of that is manifest destiny and how much of that is, realistic thinking?
Okay, well, let's be honest. We've all been around Von long enough. I don't think anybody knows anything about Von's psyche. I mean, it's one of the most interesting minds I think we've seen in the NFL in some time in terms of everything that he's interested in and everything he thinks and how he goes about his life. But how he goes about this rehab specifically, it's a little bit different than the first time around. I remember the first ACL. He was a lunatic, really, a young guy. It just really just had his mind set that he was going to beat all of the timetables that are put in front of him in terms of how he was going to get back. The mindset on this is a little bit different. It doesn't mean he doesn't want to come back. Doesn't mean he's not grinding. He's doing all of that. He's working his tail off. But I think his mindset is a little bit more of a veteran approach. And I think it's because of what he's been through. I think the spot with the Rams actually plays a part in this. If you remember, when he was traded, he was dealing with, I believe, an ankle injury, if that serves me right. And he needed to get that healthy before he was able to make an impact with the Rams. But what did he do down the stretch and in the postseason? I mean, you could say he's one of the most important players to that Super Bowl win. And I think that plays a little bit into his mind because down the stretch is more important than week one. And being even more effective down the stretch than getting back for week one, say you rushed for that, is more in his mind than maybe just getting back for week one like it was in 2013 with the first one. Now, does everybody want to come in and go against Aaron Rodgers on national television and go after him? Yeah, I really do. But I do think his veteran approach towards the stretch and the back half of the year plays into his mind much more than it did back with the first ACL.
And plus, it's nice to come in and have the Monday Night Football opening Monday Night Football game of the year. But by the same token, it's not like the Bills aren't going to be on prime time this year,
Exactly.
right? I mean, so how big a difference, and what do you think the likely scenario is that Von, like they play it cool with him and then shift gears in the last 2 months of the season, last 8-10 weeks of the season, get him revved up to make sure that when the playoffs do come around, they've got him?
To me, that's up to Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane, but I do think, all these coaches, usually what do? They divide the season into quarters roughly, right? That's usually what happens a lot. And you look at where you want to be playing your best football. I think as they go through camp and they see the way he's playing, we know this pass rush is completely different when he's on the field than when he's not. We saw it for really 7 games and how different it is. But we do know also that the Bills like to kind of rush the passer in waves. Can you play him in a limited capacity? Can you play him with limited snaps? That's probably possible. As you mentioned, kind of revving him up to get him ready, because specifically a game I was at that really jumps out at me is the game against the Chiefs. And he kind of won that game against Patrick Mahomes with 3 of the plays that he made in that game down the stretch. And I think they hit Mahomes 9 times in that game. I just think he wants to, and Sean McDermott wants him to be able to go against these top quarterbacks in the AFC. And I think getting after them with 4 is extremely important, specifically in the postseason, because these quarterbacks will tear you apart in the AFC. The group is huge. Whoever you're facing in the postseason is going to be great. You need to be able to get after them at 4, and a Von Miller healthy getting after them with 4 pass rushers, I think is extremely important. So revving him up and getting him going, I think, is a big part of it. And I think listening to Von, I think this is going to be one of those situations where there's a lot of dialogue between the player and the organization, because Von knows his body unbelievably well. I just think everything's going to point towards the side of caution in a sense because of how important the stretch run is.
And Brandon Beane was asked this, James, a little bit earlier this offseason. He claims it's mutually exclusive, but the late signing of Leonard Floyd affords them the opportunity to pace Von through this process. I mean, it's a proven pass rusher, almost 30 sacks in the last 3 seasons, and you can just line him up opposite Greg Rousseau, and you're probably pretty good until Von gets back.
You really are, and but I will say this: I think Brandon isn't lying in that sense, because I think we see Leonard Floyd at his best when his snaps are somewhat limited, right? Like when we see him being able to pick his spots. I'm not going to make a comparison, but it's kind of like, when did we see Brandon Graham play great in Philly this past year? Like, because he had fewer snaps, like he can be more effective in a sense. And I know that they're deep up there and they want these young guys to continue to evolve and grow, but I think it does give them the luxury of just a veteran presence around a group of guys that are still, a lot of them young. And Vaughn's obviously there too to help this group continue to grow and learn. I know Ed Oliver on the inside he kind of took, some earnest on himself going, I think I could have been one of the guys to step up down the stretch. And I think all of that is in a variety of guys' mindset, where I think the thought process in Buffalo is that we're not going to rely on Vaughn to be there week 1. And I think that's a pretty good mindset to have from the rest of the group, that you're not just going to rely on the future Hall of Famer, the guy that's still playing at an unbelievable level. Everybody else knows that they need to pick up their game in a sense. And if Vaughn's just kind of coming along and the organization's maybe making that decision in a sense, I think it allows everybody else to kind of take notice during training camp what they need to do at the beginning of the season. And hopefully it all comes together down the stretch.
So you've got the Bills going out to your kind of your wheelhouse, the AFC West, Broncos, Chargers, Chiefs, and Raiders. Give us a little bit of what's going on and maybe the question. Obviously, there's not too many question marks in Kansas City, and I think and I think LA is probably sitting there with thinking if they can stay healthy, they're going to be a different football team as well. Give us the kind of the lowdown on the Broncos and the new changes there with Sean Payton and the Raiders.
Yeah, I had a chance to see the Broncos firsthand, so we'll start with them when I watched OTAs and minicamp, and it's just a completely different offseason than what we saw a year ago with the previous coaching regime. And nothing against them, it's just Sean Payton is one of the best on-the-field teachers / offensive minds we've seen in the last 20 years. And the mindset in Denver really is that if he can't get Russ right, then probably nobody can. The offense is going to change from less on Russ's shoulders to more of a run-first offense. That's why they went out and got Mike McGlinchey. That's why they got Ben Powers. They revamped their whole offensive line to run the football with Javonte Williams and Samaje Perine. Now, Javonte Williams is going to be the player in Denver to keep your eye on this entire training camp. If he's ready for week 1, which I'm told is a very likely possibility with him coming off his ACL, that's huge for this Broncos team. They want to run the football, and then what I've seen is what we saw of old guys in Seattle. It's the play action, it's the bootlegs, it's what you saw Russell Wilson at his best. Still taking some shots to a decent wide receiver core, and the defense is still very good. So I think they're going to kind of change Russ. I'm told there's some muscle memory, some things that he does that they want to change, and they've been working on that. But as a whole, Russ had a pretty good offseason for what I'm told. With Vegas, it's almost like they're getting some time from Mark Davis. And it looks like, with what Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels are doing is like, what are we familiar with, right? Jacoby Myers comes in. It's somebody they're familiar with. They still have Tay Diggs. They still have Devontae Adams, who's still incredible. But you lose Darren Waller. You have a rookie tight end. I just think with Jimmy Garoppolo coming in and the way that they're operating is we have somebody that knows our system really well. Now, Jimmy's missing the offseason, so the chemistry with that group is going to fall behind a little bit of on the field. From what I'm told, they're spending a ton of time together in the film room and in the facility and things like that. But there's still a lot of questions on the defensive side of the ball for sure for Vegas that they need to fix. And you mentioned health with the Chargers. I mean, it's almost like as a football fan, I think everybody's going like, I wonder what's going to happen if the Chargers ever get like decent health luck. I mean, you lose Bosa for such a long stretch, Rashawn Slater for such a long stretch, J.C. Jackson, like they couldn't stop the run at all. The defense needs to, obviously turn a corner and get healthy, but they got so many weapons and they added another one in the draft, which everybody's like another big-bodied receiver, I guess, coming to this group. And so it's another, but to me, the difference is another offensive coordinator for Justin Herbert. I mean, it's another change as an offensive coordinator, and I think that's something to keep an eye on. They don't run the football, and I don't think Kellen Moore's running the football, so that's not going to change. But it is a little bit of a new on the offensive side of the ball. We know they're dangerous. It's just, can they stay healthy? And if we want to talk to Chiefs, we can, guys. Do you want to talk to Chiefs?
Not yet, but we will.
Okay.
Because here's one thing, James, you talk about the positive outlook for Javonte Williams, and they are a team that, as you mentioned, wants to run the ball first. And look, I think Javonte Williams is a great talent too, but should we read into the fact that it's basically just Javonte and Samaje Perine and a lot of unproven guys behind them on the depth chart? Are we to read into that the outlook is that good for Javonte Williams? Because there always is an element of risk if you're going to put a big load on a guy coming off an ACL year one, where some guys take a full year before they're really all the way back from an injury like that. I just found it interesting that, behind him is just Perine's your only proven guy, and he's been a career backup to Joe Mixon.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's why, the optimism actually started around the combine with how his rehab was going. But I'm with you in a sense where it was just a deep running back draft. And they didn't really go after it in that sense.
Yeah.
They could have made a play for a back in the middle rounds. Now, again, they were limited on picks, but at the same time, there was a lot of options to be had in a deep running back draft, and they didn't really do it. And so to me, that's either there's something telling them that Javonte Williams is going to be the player that we thought he was going to be after the rookie season, right? Coming into his second year where we saw all the talent and a dominant, rookie year where he's running over people. I think it's one that I would keep my eye on how camp is going, that there still are a number of backs out there. I mean, I'm not saying they're going to go out there and get Dalvin Cook, but I mean, somebody like Kareem Hunt's still out there. I mean, I think they could look at the early portion of training camp and see how it's going. And I wouldn't put it past them if they thought, maybe we do add one of these backs. I think everybody's waiting, for Dalvin to see where the price is in terms of these backs. And once that kind of gets set, and once we get past the, essentially with Saquon and Josh Jacobs, once we get past whether the deals get done long-term with them, the value of the running back situation is set, and maybe a few weeks into camp, they go at one of these, veteran backs to add to the group. But I'm kind of with you. It is really thin behind the two of them.
All right. So now if we get back to it, let's talk about the Chiefs. What do they have any issues that it would keep any Chiefs fan up at night?
Not when you got 15 back there. I don't think so. They have, from Kansas City standpoint, unbelievable, in my opinion, expectations for Kadarius Toney. I mean, they think he is going to be their number one clear cut. Like, they don't think he's even scratched the surface of what he can do as a wide receiver. I think we saw a little bit, obviously, in splashes in his career so far to what he can do when the football's in his hands. But they think, he's much more of a deep threat than people think. He can do so much more. I would also keep an eye on him. Like, I don't know. It's strange that DeAndre Hopkins hasn't signed anywhere. Chris Jones' deal gets done, which it most likely sooner than later does, that it frees up a lot of cap space. Maybe Hop joins the group. I don't think that makes the rest of the NFL all that excited, but I'm just curious, like, he's still weighing his options. Is he weighing his options because KC doesn't have the money yet? I don't know. But Kadarius Toney in that group is one that they're they're looking for him to lead a group of a bunch of guys that have question marks next to him. You got a rookie, you got a second-year player, and you got MVS. I think really, obviously, it all goes through Travis Kelce, but if Kadarius Toney isn't showing them what they think, I mean, maybe they do something, but I don't know. I think there's not a lot to worry about in Kansas City right now, specifically on that side of the ball. We could talk defense, but on that side of the ball, there's not a whole lot.
Yeah, I think we call those first world problems for the Chiefs.
Yeah.
The luxurious
I do want to
problems.
keep my eye on Donovan Smith, though. I do want to keep my eye on Donovan Smith playing left tackle. I mean, I thought that was an interesting move because he didn't play great last year.
Yeah, that'll definitely be interesting. James, we are unfortunately out of time, but thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. Enjoy what parts of the summer you have left before we all get this thing rolling. Yeah, it's about. Yeah, you're right. It's about that much. Good to see you. We'll catch up with you during the season.
All right, guys, take it easy.